My name is Harold Whitmore. I am 78 years old. I built bridges my entire life. Literal bridges, steel and concrete, spanning rivers and valleys. I was proud of that work. I believed that if you build something with enough care, enough love, it lasts forever. I was wrong, because the one thing I could never have built, the one thing I never saw coming, was the bridge my own daughter was constructing behind my back, not to connect us, to bury me. What I'm about to tell you is the most painful story of my life, and I am telling it because someone out there needs to hear it. Someone out there is living it right now. Confused, isolated, afraid, wondering if they imagined it all. You didn't imagine it. And justice is coming. Stay with me. I want you to understand who I was before all of this. Before Diana, before the lawyers and the courtrooms and the lies, I was a father. That was the most important thing I ever was. When my wife Margaret passed, God, she was only 44 years old. I made her a promise, standing beside her hospital bed. I told her, I will take care of them, both of them. I will not fall apart. Diana was 12, Thomas was 9, and I was a 46-year-old man who had just lost the love of his life and had no idea how to raise 2 children alone. But I did it. I worked double shifts when I had to. I never missed a school play, a soccer game, a parent-teacher conference. I paid for Diana's college, 4 years, every cent. I paid for her first car. I paid for her wedding when she was 27. I paid for her divorce lawyer when that marriage crumbled 2 years later. I co-signed her apartment lease twice. I never complained, not once, because that's what fathers do. That's what love does. By the time I turned 72, I had a paid-off house worth about $380,000, $210,000 in savings, a pension, and the kind of peace that comes from knowing you gave everything you had. I was ready for a quiet life. I was not ready for what came next. Diana called me one Sunday evening. She said she was worried about me living alone. She said she wanted to be close. She said, and I remember these words exactly, "Dad, you gave me everything. Let me give something back." I cried, "If I'm honest with you." I actually cried. I thought, maybe this is Margaret's doing. Maybe this is the universe giving me something beautiful after so much hardship. I said yes. I told her she was welcome in my home for as long as she needed. She moved in 3 weeks later. At first, things seemed fine. She cooked sometimes. She drove me to a few appointments. She smiled at the neighbors, introduced herself, made a wonderful first impression. But slowly, so slowly I almost didn't notice, things began to change. She started telling people I was confused, that I forgot things, that I left the stove on, that I got lost driving. None of it was true. Not a single word. I did my crossword puzzle every single morning. I read 2 newspapers a day. I called Thomas every Sunday, and we talked for an hour about baseball, about politics, about life. My doctor had given me a clean bill of health 6 months before Diana moved in. But she was telling stories, and people were listening. I didn't know it yet. I didn't know she was building a case. I didn't know she had already started researching how to take everything from me, legally. Papers arrived on a Tuesday. I remember standing at the front door in my robe, holding an envelope from a law firm I had never heard of, reading words that made the world tilt beneath my feet. Petition for legal guardianship. Petitioner, Diana Whitmore. Respondent, Harold James Whitmore. She was petitioning the court to declare me mentally incapacitated. She was trying to become my legal guardian. She was trying to take control of my home, my savings, my pension, my life. Everything I had spent 40 years building. My hands were shaking, not because I was confused, not because I was fragile, because I was furious. I called Thomas immediately. My voice broke on the phone. I won't pretend it didn't. I told him, "Son, your sister is trying to make them think I'm crazy, so she can take everything." Thomas was on a plane the next morning. What he found when he arrived: she had moved me into the smallest bedroom in my own house. My books were gone. My television was gone. She had taken my car keys. She had changed the Wi-Fi password. She monitored my phone calls. I was a prisoner, in the home I had paid for, in the home where I had raised my children, in the home where Margaret and I had shared 22 years of our lives together. My own daughter had made me a prisoner in my own home. And she had hired a lawyer, a psychologist I had never met, a man who spent 1 hour with me and declared I had moderate cognitive decline, and a collection of neighbors she had spent months whispering lies to. She had thought of everything, almost everything. Thomas hired an attorney named Claire Russo, elder law specialist, sharp as a blade and twice as relentless. When Claire sat across from me for the first time, she looked me in the eye and said, "Harold, I need you to trust me, and I need you to be patient, because we are going to take this apart piece by piece." I trusted her. The legal battle was ugly. Diana's side painted me as a confused, helpless old man who needed saving from himself. They brought in the coached neighbors. They brought in the fraudulent psychologist. They brought in every lie Diana had carefully constructed over months. But Thomas had been recording our Sunday phone calls for years, not for any strategic reason, just because he liked to listen back to them. Hours and hours of recordings, me talking about baseball scores, about the news, about books I was reading, about memories of Margaret, a man with moderate cognitive decline. Claire played those recordings in court. Then she brought in my real doctor, who testified that I showed 0 clinical signs of dementia at my last full evaluation. Then she discovered something about Diana's psychologist that changed everything. He had lost his license in another state for falsifying reports in a previous guardianship case. He had done this before, to someone else's father. And finally, Claire arranged for me to be evaluated by 3 independent, board-certified neurologists, people with no connection to Diana, no connection to anyone in this case. I sat with those doctors for 4 hours. I told them about the bridges I built. I told them Margaret's favorite song, Moon River, in case you're wondering. I told them every address I had ever lived at since I was a boy. I solved equations. I answered history questions. I made them laugh twice. When it was over, the lead neurologist shook my hand and said, "Mr. Whitmore, you are one of the sharpest 78-year-olds I have evaluated in 30 years of practice." I am not ashamed to tell you, I wept right there in that office. Because someone had finally seen me. Not a confused old man, not a burden, not a target. Me, the courtroom was full the day Judge Evelyn Carter read her ruling. I sat at the front, straight, dignified, the same man I had always been. Diana sat across the room. Even then, even after everything, she looked confident. She really believed she had won. Judge Carter spoke for 11 minutes. No, dismissed Diana's guardianship petition completely, unequivocally. Then she ordered a full investigation into my financial accounts. Because during the months Diana had been in my home, while she was playing the devoted daughter, She had withdrawn $47,000 from my savings. My money gone, spent on her debts, her lifestyle, herself. The judge referred the case to the state attorney's office. 3 weeks later, my daughter was arrested. She was charged with elder financial abuse, fraud, and criminal exploitation of a vulnerable adult. She was convicted on all 3 counts, 4 years in state prison, full restitution. With interest, I sat in that courtroom, and I cried in a way I hadn't cried since Margaret died. But these were different tears. These were the tears of a man who had been told he was nothing, and had proven, in front of a judge and a full courtroom, that he was everything he had always been. Thomas held my hand. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Outside, a reporter asked me if I had a message for anyone going through something similar. I thought about Margaret. I thought about the bridges. I thought about all the years I had given to people I loved without asking for anything in return. And I said, don't give up. The truth is patient. It waits. And eventually, it wins. I went home that evening to a house that was finally mine again. My books went back on their shelves. My television went back in my room. My keys were back in my pocket. Thomas stayed for a month. We cooked together, and badly the both of us, because Margaret was always the cook. We watched baseball. We sat on the porch in the evenings and talked about her, about the old days, about nothing and everything. It was the most peaceful month I had known in years. Diana began her sentence 30 days after the verdict. I will not tell you I felt nothing. She was still my daughter. That never stops being true. But I had learned something through all of this. Something I wish I had understood sooner. Love is not a blank check, and forgiveness is not the same as forgetting. I lived 4 more years after that trial. Good years, full years. I passed at 82, in my own bed, in my own home, with Thomas beside me and my grandchildren's drawings on the wall. My estate went exactly where I intended, and somewhere, I hope, Margaret was watching and smiling. If my story reached you today, if it made you think of someone you love, someone who might be vulnerable, someone who needs a voice, please share it, because stories like mine are happening right now to real people, to real fathers and mothers and grandparents who built their lives with love and deserve to end them with dignity. Subscribe to Karma's Final Word, because every week we tell the stories that need to be told, and Karma always gets the last word, always.